Hi, I'm Riley Shea, and welcome to my channel, Riley Shea Harpist. Today I wanted to do a different kind of video, kind of a sit-down talking video about building a repertoire. This can be a very difficult thing for musicians first starting out, and I wanted to give some of my tips and tricks. The reason I wanted to talk about this now is because learning new repertoire and building up new pieces is a great thing to do over March break. Which for some post-secondary students, that's what's happening right now. A lot of high school students have March break right now. And other people may have already had their reading week. And if not, we're still kind of coming up on a spring or summer break for most people. So now is a great time to start thinking about your plans for that time off, if you have it from school, and what you want to do with it. Because sometimes you get to that point and you actually don't end up doing anything with your time. So start thinking now. If you have big plans, put them into place. Building a repertoire is not as difficult as some people think it is. And it really depends on your background, because I was a harpist that did private music lessons for years and years. I did harp. I also did piano lessons. And I had a harp teacher who was very in the gigging mindset and in the mindset of being able to play in lots of different scenarios. So I was given a huge wealth of repertoire, which was amazing. But not everybody has that from their teacher, and not everybody's in that mindset when they first start. Maybe they just classically train and only play the repertoire that they need to do their RCM levels or different things like that. So this is a great time, if you're wanting to start doing different things, to start thinking about what else you want to be playing for. The first step in building repertoire is to know your audience. What kind of environments do you want to be playing in? This can vary very widely. Some people want to play in church or other religious settings. In that case, you're going to be wanting to play what you're going to be singing in church. In my case, I started out playing in church a lot, and I would learn a lot of the hymns or praise and worship songs that we commonly sung a lot because I knew it would be familiar to the audience. Other people in other religious settings, if they have the opportunity to play music, would probably want to do the same thing. Find stuff that you sing all the time, or stuff that you know that your particular organization or denomination sings. Maybe you're wanting to do concerts. In that case, you need some performance repertoire. This is going to be very different, right? You want flashy pieces. You want them very rounded out, very performance ready. Maybe you're looking at doing therapeutic music in hospice or palliative care, nursing, retirement homes, and hospitals. Even amongst those three different options, there's a lot of different demographics and clientele you can have. Nursing, retirement homes, mostly older people. You're going to think about an older generation. Hospice and palliative care, usually older people, but can be younger people, and even in some cases children. And hospitals, you can really have anybody, depending on what part of the hospital you're playing in. And especially if you're just kind of playing as people are walking into a lobby, you can have any number of people coming in. Maybe you want to be playing for schools or like children's groups or community settings. In that case, you really need to kind of sit down and think, okay, what am I playing for? In the past, I've played for the UCW in my local area, which is the United Church Women. So it is kind of have a religious affiliation, but it's also just kind of like a social club for older ladies. So keeping that in mind going in, I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to play. Maybe you're just busking out on the street. Whether you live in a small town or a really big city, this can be a great experience, especially if you're in it with the mindset of just going and having fun. Busking is kind of its own animal, its whole own different thing. I have not done very much of it at all, but I know some people who make a living doing just that. You have to have things that'll catch people's attention. You have to be prepared to talk and play at the same time, because people come up to you and ask you questions. And you would be wanting to think about, do I put out my hat or what have you to collect some money? What area are you in? What kind of background do those people have that are in that area? You're going to want to think about really popular music. Maybe you're playing for dinners or private events. This is my bread and butter. I would prefer to do private events any day, usually some sort of fundraising gala or dinner. And this is good to keep in mind. You're going to want to be a little classier, You don't really want people to be watching you, but just enjoying listening to the music in the background. Maybe you're playing weddings, in which case you need a lot of classical repertoire, all the classical wedding stuff, and some new stuff. A lot of pop music, a lot of love songs, maybe some stuff from even video games or movies. Brides and grooms want a lot of different stuff these days. Weddings, you need to be very prepared to be very polished because it's the biggest day of that person's life. Maybe you're just wanting to play for yourself, which is just fine. A lot of people think you need to have these lofty goals when you become a musician, especially a harpist. But some people just want to play for themselves, and that's okay. So in that case, what do you like to play? What do you want to learn? Once you decided what environments you're playing in, we can figure out who you're playing for. Depending on your environment, of course, we'll have different demographics. So decide your environments. And if that's multiple environments, then that's great. Me personally, I'm pretty much open to playing anywhere, and I've done a lot of, for example, dinners or different stuff like that where you need a wide repertoire. So it's okay to not pigeonhole yourself into a box. But when we're thinking about people in this environment that you've chosen, let's think about their demographics. How old are they? Are they children? Are they teenagers? Are they older adults? Are they parents of young children? Are they Gen X, boomers, silent generation? Are they like in their 80s and 90s? This is going to determine what kind of music that they grew up listening to, right? It's often great, especially in more therapeutic settings, in more emotional settings, to play nostalgic music. And it's important to know what kind of generation these people grew up in, so you know what's nostalgic for them. What's nostalgic for my mom is not the same nostalgia for my grandmother, right? Because they grew up in completely different generations, and same thing for me. Some 80s songs that I find fun and interesting, my mom hates because they were so overplayed. So you really have to figure that out and figure out what you're going to cater to. You want to think about their ethnic background as well. A lot of times I'm playing music that I know or that I was taught, that I grew up with. But in our ever-growing world, especially in my city, it's very multicultural. So it's important to think about, especially when you're playing in more personal settings like hospice, palliative care, hospitals, even weddings, the different ethnic backgrounds of those people. Because, you know, maybe you have a Christian background and you're prepared to play hymns for somebody's palliative care or even a funeral. But they're not Christian. Maybe they're Jewish. Maybe they're Muslim. Maybe they're part of a different religion. Maybe they have no religious affiliation. It's important to think about that when we're playing for different types of people, because different songs can have different meanings. It's also important to think about where they're from. Are they from Canada? For example, me as a child growing up in Canada, certain things are nostalgic for me living in Canada. Not the same thing for someone who was born in the 80s in Ukraine, for example. That's not going to be the same. Not to say that you need to know songs from every single country of the world, but sometimes it's nice to have a little bit of everything, right? For example, I'll have like a Canadian folk song. Then we'll do something Celtic, which is kind of Scottish Irish. Maybe I can bring in a Japanese song. Maybe I can bring in a Spanish speaking song, which if we do a little bit of research, we can see that it was popular in Latin America. Maybe I find a really popular Arabic song. I know for a fact in my city, there's a lot of Arabic speaking people, and there's a lot of people from India as well. So those are places that we might not otherwise think about, and it could be cool to kind of pick up on a couple pieces, a couple songs, even pop songs that we know are popular, because you can make that connection with different kinds of people. The location that you're in can have a big impact too. If I'm in the city, I'm going to play just something different than perhaps if I'm in the county and playing to a lot of old white people, right? Maybe you're in New York City. There's a lot of songs about New York City. Some people might like that, and some people might not like that. If you're playing New York in New York City, it could be a little overdone. But some people might enjoy that. If you're in a really old southern town in the southern states, they might love some country. I know even places near me, they love some country. It really depends on where you are, and that's kind of important to think about as well. The culture of the area you're in, we kind of talked about that a little bit already. What did they grow up in? What are they used to? A lot of songs, music itself can have a lot of emotional connections. And it's important to consider all of those things when choosing repertoire. And even gender or sexual orientation can have an impact. I know, for example, like if I'm playing in a more LGBTQ plus space, I'm going to think about what songs I want to play. More so like, I know that Somewhere Over the Rainbow can be a really beautiful meaning for a lot of people in that community. So I might choose to play that. I might choose to play some Lady Gaga because I know that she's a queer advocate. I might choose to play Chapel Roan, and it's going to mean a little bit more to them because it's like a gay party anthem, right? I might choose not to play other music because I know that that's not something that's going to be as impactful for them. These are all just things to consider. It's not a yes or no hard rule, but they're great things to think about so that you can create a good environment and have your music mean a lot more to somebody. Once we've chosen where we're going to play, who are we playing to, now we need to do some research. In some cases, you might already know. For example, I was trained on the harp, so I know a lot of Celtic music already, and I know a lot of classical music, and I even know a lot of Latin music because a lot of harp music is also Latin American. So I might know some pieces like that already and go, boom, 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 I can do these pieces for this sort of demographic. But you might not know. For example, years ago, I had a lovely gig. I got hired to play for an 80th and 90th birthday celebration at a retirement home. All of their residents that were turning either the 80 or 90s, I think it was just 90 actually. Anybody that was turning 90 or older, they had a great big birthday party for all of them. So going in, I was thinking, what songs are these people going to want to listen to, right? Not the same songs that I listen to, right? They're 90 years old. What kind of things did they live through, right? A lot of them were old enough to remember the Great Depression, World War II. Some of them were active in the Canadian military during World War II. They didn't necessarily go out, but they were recruited. Some of them remember very early Disney movies. Some of them remembered a lot of other different things. And I did a lot of research for that gig. I asked a lot of other people. And I played some songs that I wouldn't have otherwise played. And I just remember the reaction from the crowd. I believe I played because I was trying to figure out what year they would have been born if they were so old. And I think it was in 1910s, would have been in the 1910s, 1920s. So I think I found the number one song of that year, and I learned how to play it. It was like an old sort of like pop song of its era, and I played that. And I got a really good rendition of White Cliffs of Dover going, which is a song by Vera Lynn, which was very popular during World War II, and it was very nostalgic for lots of people. So I learned how to play that song. And there was not a dry eye in the room. All of these 90-something-year-old people were so moved and touched just hearing that song and hearing that melody. It brought them right back to their young adulthood, in some cases childhood, living through the war. Even if they weren't seeing action, it was still impactful for them. So this is why it's important to figure out who you're playing for, because they really enjoyed it, and they also had an emotional reaction, which in some cases you may or may not want to do that, but it was a great look back for them. So that was really great. So I did lots of research. I looked up what songs were popular in those years. I looked up kind of the history of music in World War II. There were a lot of pop songs in World War II, like Pop of Its Time. Who was singing songs? What do the lyrics mean? Why are they famous? What was popular the year they were born? What was popular when they would have been a teenager? So depending on your situation, what are some, of the most famous Arabic songs, for example? I know there's a couple because I have friends that kind of sing them all the time. Can we learn a little bit of that and pull that out when we see somebody that might recognize that song? Can we figure out what the most popular top 40 hits are right now? Maybe that'll come in handy for busking, something like that. Can we figure out what are some really peaceful and calming pieces, maybe even original music, that we can play for palliative care? how can we help soothe people who are dying? These are all really great things to do. So do your research, look up lots of stuff, and if you're like me, you keep it all locked in here, and it's very good. Then we need to decide, once we kind of done some research, decided what we wanted to play, are we memorizing the songs or are we playing them from sheet music? No judgment either way. I do both. During COVID, I decided that it would be a really good idea to have a list of songs that I had memorized. I was never a really good memorizer of music. I always liked reading off the page. Even if I knew it kind of by heart, the page was just like an emotional support for me. So I love reading music off the page. I'm really good at reading lead sheets, which are just like sheets with the chords, the lyrics, very basic melody, and then going off of that. That's just how I play. So I will personally play from music any day. But I thought it would be a good challenge for myself to learn some songs by ear, in some cases by ear, and memorize them so that I could play them in multiple keys. And even though I never finished that project because it was quite ambitious, the amount of songs I wanted to learn, the 6 to 10 that I worked on first and that I memorized, I can still play to this day in probably 3 or 4 different keys. If I whip out my harpsichord, I can just start playing them. So that can be really valuable too. If you're the type of person that wants to memorize music and then might be in a situation where you need to play something, go ahead and memorize it. And what I did was I decided I'm going to memorize 30 songs. I don't think I actually hit 30, but we're still getting there. And each one was something different. I memorized a hymn. I memorized a Celtic piece. I memorized a folk song. I memorized a Canadian song. And a pop song from every era, like 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s even. I memorized like a classical piece, so something like Blue Danube Waltz, which is very famous. I tried to do all these different things, something from a movie, something from a TV show, so that I had a little bit of everything, because I'm the type of person that's in an environment where I might play a little bit of everything, and I like a little bit of everything. So it was important to me to do that. So organizing that and figuring that out is great. If you're playing from sheet music, put together a book. I always put together books. I photocopy my music for my own personal use, and I have probably 20 binders sitting on my bookshelf right now that have all different sets of music in them, depending on the occasion and the place that I was playing at. Sometimes I keep them, sometimes I deconstruct them again, but some that I really like, I've kept. Now, where do you find music? I am personally very blessed. I have been given lots and lots of sheet music over the years by various different people, and I've just collected it. I have shelves and shelves of sheet music. Now, what will inevitably happen is that I want to play something, or somebody has asked me to play something that I don't have sheet music for. That's when we go online. It's gotten even better lately that you can find a lot of free resources online, and in some cases, very cheap. You can purchase a single song online. In my case, I have a subscription to MuseScore. I'm not sponsored, I promise. It's just very worth it, which is a free music transcription software. Like, you can use it to compose, arrange music. It's like a music notation software. They have their own database, so anybody that creates music using MuseScore can post it online, and you can download it for free if you pay for their subscription for the year. I literally use it all the time. I use it with my students when I'm trying to arrange songs for them. I use it just recently. I have a wedding coming up that the bride wants a lot of Taylor Swift. I don't have a Taylor Swift book, but I know Taylor Swift is very good for harp, so I've found it on MuseScore. I printed it off. I even actually downloaded it and transposed it to the key that I wanted, because you can do that super easy. So it's gotten a lot easier to find music online, especially if you're willing to pay for a subscription or even purchase just a digital copy, especially if you just want to download it and print it right there. Another way that I get a lot of my pop music or different kind of choices is I purchase piano, vocal, guitar books, usually by Hal Leonard. They're very expensive, as is all print music, but it can be worth it. I have some examples to show you. And like I said, because I'm really good at following chord charts, lead sheets, just kind of picking out a melody, these work really well for me. If you're the type of person who needs an arrangement and to be told exactly what to do for every single part, these might not work for you, because a lot of it might not be transferable to the harp. In which case, you can find some harp arrangements of those pieces, which is absolutely doable. But in my case, I love a good piano, vocal, guitar book. So for example, I have a Led Zeppelin book, which is literally just like Led Zeppelin's greatest hits for piano, vocal, guitar. If you take a look inside, it has a melody line and then a line for piano to play. In a lot of cases, the piano might not be playing the melody. So you kind of have to go through and decipher. I like to read the chords at the top. I don't use the charts because I don't play guitar, but I just know, oh, that's a G5, a G major 7. And I slap it together. We played a couple times. I might take some of the instrumentation from the piano arrangement, and I play around with it until it works. This has been my tried and true method for a long time. It mostly works, not always. And not all songs are transferable to the style of the harp, which you come to realize when you've played for a long time. But these can be really great because you get like probably 20 songs in one book instead of paying $5 per download for like 5 different sets of sheet music. Just buy one book. I know that I wanted to play a lot of Led Zeppelin, so I bought the book. Another one is A Star is Born. When this came out, it was really popular. Instead of paying for one arrangement of Shallow, I just bought the whole book, and it was probably only a little bit more. I have yet to play other pieces in the book, but if I ever do, I have the book. This one here is one that I got for Christmas, actually. It's the Great American Songbook. So it literally has most of the jazz standards of our time, and there's like 300 pages. So something like this is really worth it, especially if you're playing jazz, if you know how to fake it, read lead sheets, stuff like that. This will always be an invaluable resource. I have lots of books like this that are just huge, chock full of a whole bunch of different songs. Now, if you're looking for arrangements, a book like this can be really great. I know it says first, do not take that seriously because these arrangements can be really difficult in this book, but it's a great book. So it has literally arrangements exactly for lever and pedal harp of a lot of very popular music. So if you're the type of person that really needs an arrangement to figure out what to do, this is excellent. Personally, I use some of these. Some of them have a lot of really difficult lever changes, and they've figured that out for me, which is great. And then some of the other pieces in here, I've learned how to play on my own before, and I like my own arrangement better. So I just figure it out. Sylvia Woods also has lots of books for lever harpists of great arrangements. This is just an Andrew Lloyd Webber book. So it literally has most of the songs from Phantom. It's got Cats. It's got Jesus Christ Superstar, Evita, basically his greatest hits of those things, and it's got a basic harp arrangement. I use this book all the time because I love playing Phantom, and it's a lot easier for some people than trying to decipher the piano, vocal, guitar. I also have a piano book of Phantom because I played on the piano, so I use both. When in doubt, don't be afraid to look for other sources, because recently, the last couple years or so, I've started watching the Studio Ghibli movies, and realizing how popular those songs and pieces are for this latest generation of people. Some of them, people even have them for their weddings. It's nice to hear it in the background if you're playing some sort of background music. And a lot of the Ghibli piano books were very expensive anywhere that I went. And they still didn't have all the pieces that I wanted them to have. So I did a little bit of research, and I stumbled across this on Amazon. This is a Japanese version of piano arrangements of Studio Ghibli pieces. It's like the anthology. Now, I do not read Japanese. I do not know what any of this says. However, sheet music is sheet music. Chord symbols are chord symbols, and I can still read the music. So, recently, I painstakingly went through each of them using Google Translate and figured out which each of the songs were called and penciled them in so that I knew. But this was cheaper and easier for me because it has songs from all of their major films up until recently. And it had more of the pieces that I wanted in it. So even though it was in a different language, I can still read the music, still understand it. It was a great investment. Now, you can also sometimes find free stuff on the internet. I once found an entire fake book of like old pop songs that I just downloaded. I don't know where they got it, but I downloaded it. And I still use it. Some things are in the public domain. You can find lots of things in the public domain. And even easy piano versions of things from piano educational websites can get you a great start. So just start some research, start gathering up some books, and start looking. Once you know all of those previous things, the environment you're playing in, who you're playing for, what pieces you want to do, you've done a little bit of research, make a list. Don't be afraid to make a list. It can be difficult to keep track, especially if you're learning lots of pieces at once, figuring out what I want to do first. And if you get too excited like me, you pull out like 10 different pieces and you get overwhelmed. So make a list. Like I said, I made a list for my memorizing songs with each genre that I wanted to do. And it could be as simple as, okay, I want to learn these 3 songs. This is my list, right? Don't be afraid to stay organized. A good, important piece before we go is to know your own limitations, especially when it comes to the harp, which I'm speaking mostly to harpists here, as that's my experience. There's some pieces that technically work on the harp. It's playable. You can play all the notes, but it doesn't sound right. It's not quite the same. So it's important to know that sometimes it's just not going to work, and that's okay. Some pieces are not conducive to the harp, and that's okay. Even stuff that sounds really good on the piano does not sound good on the harp, so that's okay. Other stuff sounds amazing on the harp, and you would have no idea. Sweet Child of Mine sounds beautiful on the harp. You would have no idea. You just come to learn these things with time. For me, I've been playing a lot of different things for a long time, trying to see, oh, I wonder if I could play that on the harp. It's just trial and error, and after a while, you listen to something and you go, we can make that work. Other times you listen and go, that's not good, no good. And then other times you're like, that would sound amazing. So you get to know with your ear what's going to work and what doesn't. And if you're being requested to play a piece, don't be afraid to say no. A lot of people don't know what goes into arranging a piece. They don't know how music works. They don't know how instruments work. If you know that something's not going to sound good or that you can't do it, don't be afraid to say no. In my case, I've done some requests before for weddings. The first one I did, it was doable, but it was a long haul. And after that, I realized it might be a good idea to charge a little bit extra if I'm getting a specific request that I had to like buy music for, source music for. It can be a lot. So don't be afraid to do that either. And then more recently, like I said, I had a bride request Taylor Swift. I know that Taylor Swift sounds pretty good on the harp for the most part. I listened to the pieces, her versions of them, did a little bit of research, made sure I can find music, made sure it was a key that's playable on my harp, made sure there wasn't too many accidentals because I played the lever harp, or if there were, that they were doable. And that's when I said, yes, I can do this. This is going to sound great. So don't be afraid to know your own limits and to say no. And sometimes you really want to play a piece, even for yourself, and it doesn't work out. You just got to move on. Or maybe you can find a really creative way to make it work. You never know. Last and most importantly, you need to have fun. Sourcing repertoire, playing new pieces is one of my favorite things about being a musician. I love doing research. I love finding new pieces to play. I love getting new books like my giant one and looking through and going, oh, I know that song. I know that song. I don't know that song. Let's listen to it, research it, figure it out, play it, and it sounds great. It can be so rewarding and so fun and exciting. So make it fun. Find fun pieces to play. I always love playing like some sort of crazy 80s something and being like, look, I can play this on the harp. So have fun. Thanks so much for watching. I'm so glad you could join me learning a little bit about how to build your own repertoire. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. And let me know how it goes. If you're building your own repertoire, give me an update. Let me know what kind of music you want to play. What kind of places do you want to play? Let me know in the comments or hit me up on social media. But this has been my video for the day, and we'll see you next time. Bye.